My name is Kevin DuBose. I'm the director of the Lonsdale Area Ministries here at Emerald Youth, and I want to share with you some thoughts and a scripture on this Worship Wednesday. The scripture can be found in Isaiah 58, verses 9 through 12, and it says this: "If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing of the finger and the malicious talk, and if you spend yourself on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in darkness. Your night will become like noonday." And then it goes on and says, "The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land. He will strengthen your frame." Another version says he will strengthen your bones. But here's my favorite part. It says you will be like a well-watered garden whose spring will never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and raise up age-old foundations. You will be called repairers of the walls, restorers of streets and dwellings. That's the word found in Isaiah. But isn't that a wonderful thought? The idea that God's people would be known as restorers of streets, a people that would revitalize places, that when we show up, there's restoration. That is a wonderful thought. And I love this scripture for this time for two reasons. One is it tells us, hey, if you will stop the malicious talk and the pointing of the finger and work on behalf of those who are oppressed, then the Lord will step in. And it says that your light will rise in darkness. The thing about light is very influential. You can light a match in a dark auditorium and you can see that match from the back row. And I happen to believe that light was specifically ordained for darkness. For in Genesis 1, God says, "Let there be light." So the light is the solution to darkness, just like God's people are a solution to this dark world. But get this, if you bring a bunch of lights together, you really haven't done much. What I mean by that is, if the lights are already on and you add another light to it, you haven't done much. But if those lights go into darkness with their influence, those lights go into darkness with their impact, then the light transforms the darkness. And then it goes on to say, if you do these things, your people will be restorers, repairers, renewers of the city. That's why I got into ministry. I wanted to be like my dad. Who was my pastor. I wanted to translate the good news that I heard Sunday out on the streets. He would often say, "Let your light so shine," in the booming voice of an African-American pastor. But my dad also showed me how to let his light shine in darkness. I was about 9 years old, and we were coming home after spending some time with family. And we pull into the driveway of where we lived, there was an apartment complex. See, my dad was a bivocational pastor at the time, and he wanted to be in a low-income community to have, a gospel impact on that community. And our church was comprised of folks in the neighborhood. And pulling into that complex that night, there were a bunch of police cars there, 15 or so, and I can remember my dad going out to check on them. So he gets out of the car and he starts to go over to the commotion. And an officer says, in a very disrespectful tone, "Get over on the sidewalk." And my dad said, "Sir, I work here. I'm just trying to find out what's going on so I can report it to the owner." And about that time, the Billy Club came out and my dad was taken down. And I'll never forget what the officer said. He said, "I thought I told you uppity N-word to get over on the sidewalk." That stuck with me. Stuck with me. Mom tried to bail Dad out that Friday night, and he actually made one phone call and he said, "Honey, do not bail me out. I've done nothing wrong." To post bond would be to assume some sort of guilt in his mind. And so he stayed there from Friday, and ultimately she got him out on a Tuesday, I believe. But here's what I remember. That Sunday was the first Sunday I ever had experience without my dad being at church. And I can remember that Sunday, the impact of that Sunday on me being a 9-year-old. I was worshiping without my dad for the very first time in my life. I can remember the absent, my pastor. I think we just sang songs and read some scriptures, but I remember that one song that was sung. And it happened to be my favorite song at the time, but I didn't feel like singing it. It was "This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine." I didn't want to sing that song that day because I was in despair about what had happened that weekend. But on the other hand, Dad, downtown in the city jail, was sharing the good news of the gospel. And believe it or not, we had all sorts of converts coming to our church on the next Sunday and the future weeks that had met Dad in the jail. So he let his light shine through the darkness. And I think that's a wonderful concept for us today, is to understand that we are the solution to a dark world. That God has put shalom in his people. And that word shalom means peace, but it means more than peace. It's complete peace. It is the idea of being without lack, lacking nothing, wanting nothing. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's inside of us. And with our influence, we can truly change Knoxville and this world. That's my thought for this Worship Wednesday. God bless you.